Hi everybody, welcome back. Here we are at my 6x4 layout, which is the original layout I started building on this channel back during lockdown, who remembers those days. I need to do a bit of work on it. The buildings I originally had on it have got broken and smashed up over the time. So I've got some of these Metcalfe buildings I'm going to replace, which means I have to readjust the gardens. There's also a couple of other little bits need fixing. There's lights that have got broken, a couple of signs that are broken, and just give it a general tidy up and a clean. So let's get stuck into that. So let's have a closer look at what I need to do. So obviously I had some houses here. You're going to have to break away these pavements and cut back these gardens here because obviously these new houses don't quite fit in the same. So I need to trim back the fences and the gardens and rework them slightly. I'm going to have to remove these to get this pavement out. And also you can see some of these are knocked over, broken, and just to be glued in. One here broken off completely. And you can see one of the signs has come apart. So that's got to be fixed up, tidied up, give the track a good clean. There's little bits of scenic work that need fixing over here. You can see where the paint is peeled, so I'll touch that up. Let's just give it a tidy up. Then I can take this out of here, put it into storage at the museum, and then I can crack on with my bigger layout, which you can see there. It's going to take a lot more work to get done. Anyway, back to this. I'll start clearing this off and then we'll have a look at it. You can see now, cleared away the footpath that was glued down, so I've managed to break it off. It's damaged some of the road surface there, so I'm just going to use some rail match tarmac colour, which is I think what I used on here originally. So I'm just going to paint over that, let it dry, and then we'll carry on with fitting the houses. Managed to lose one of the, you can see here, one of the drain covers up the vacuum, so I'll have to get another one of them out and stick it in. But other than that, the lights have come out. I haven't broken any wires, so we can put those back in once we get the houses in place. So I'll paint that, let it dry, and then we'll get the houses fitted. And there we go now. I've painted it. You can see here as well, I've cut the fences and the hedges back so I can fit the buildings. And I've got a corner shop to go on here. Now, these are all Metcalfe kits. So I'm going to fit that just about there. So it lines up with the fence there, with the double yellow lines on the front. And then in front of that is just a normal house to go along with that. So if I come around the side, you can see that there. Okay. Now you see that these houses aren't completely finished. Obviously I haven't put the paving slabs down the front yet. I haven't put the chimneys on or done the ridging along the top and the joints of the roofs, simply because I'm fitting these in place now. The chimneys and that sort of thing can get damaged when you're moving this around, so it's easier get them in place, then put the final touches on them. Now to be sticking these in place, I'm going to be using normal PVA glue. This is just cheap PVA glue from Poundland. For putting the buildings together, I used rocket car glue, very good glue. Gives you a couple of seconds of working time for putting the kits together. Metcalfe kits are very, very good. Can't recommend them highly enough. I'll link a video up here what I've done before on putting kits together. Just a few tips and hints. So what I'm going to use for this now, as I say, is PVA, purely because that gives me a little bit more working time to get it in the final position. So I'm going to paint some PVA on here now. So let's put a blob of PVA on there. Use a brush just to move it around up to the edges where I'm going to put it. And we can leave this to dry overnight. So the PVA gives me a little bit more working time, whereas the rocket car glue is a bit more quickly bonding. And put the other house beside it. Position. Press them down. Now I'm going to use some good old tins of chopped tomatoes here from Asda. Other tins are available. I'm just going to put these around just to weigh it down. And if you want to see what I make with tins of tomatoes, check out my cooking channel. So I'm going to leave that to dry. I'm going to do the other side as well. I've got 2 houses to put over there. Leave them to dry overnight, and then I'll come back and then we'll have a look at the gardens, because obviously there's gaps around here I need to fill in. So we'll do some static grassing and that. Put the fence post back in, or sorry, the washing line back in, and redo some of the gardens. So leave this to dry overnight and then tackle that tomorrow. So here we go, the houses are in place now, they're glued in. I've done some work on these back gardens here. You can see I've extended some of the hedges so they all fit in. I've put some clump foliage around the patio areas there to hide the different levels. I've put some steps in here. We'll continue around on the other side and I'll show you how I made the steps. This is a pack of Metcalfe paving slabs. What I've done is I've simply just taken them, focus here, stacked them like that for a set of steps. So I'm going to glue these in place over here now. You can see on these gardens here, I've already put them in place. Let me just put the camera down. So we're going to put them in here. So I'm going to take a bit of rocket car glue. These are sticky, but to be honest, they're not that sticky, so a little bit of glue just to help them stay in place. There we go. Just pop that in. There we go. And what I'm going to do is just put a little blob of glue under the step. I'm just going to hold that in place. So I'll hold that in place, let it dry, and then we'll come back and we're going to do some static grassing around here. Okay, so I'm going to put some static grass along here. So what I'm using is the micro applicator from WWS. This is the Pro Grass Detailer. And I'm using some of their layering spray. This comes in the pump bottle. Let me just move the camera out so you can see. Yep. So the layering spray. And then here's a closer look at the detailing. So it's just a smaller end on it for getting into tight spaces. I'll put the camera back down there again. So what I'm using is a dropper to get some of the glue. So I can just be a bit more exact about where I'm putting it, because obviously wherever the glue is where the static grass is going to go. So there's that in. Now we'll switch on the applicator. I'm just going to shake it in there. So in here I've got 4mm spring grass, that's what I'm using. And what I can do is just use my finger just to move some of that down. Move it off the steps. Just tease it around a little bit because it's such a small area. And what I'm going to do is just put the applicator just over it, just hover it over, just to try and get some of that grass to stand back up. Now I'll leave that to dry, and then I might come back over and do some 6mm over it just to try and hide this step. And then I'm going to do the same over here as well. There we go, gardens are done, a bit of clump foliage there around the fence, static grass is done, steps are in place. So I'm happy enough now with the gardens, they're all done, houses are in place. See the gardens on this side. The little bits that needed patching up on the hillside, I've done those, covered it up with some clump foliage again. The sign that was broken, that's been glued back together, so that's working. Last thing to do now is this light. So what I'm going to do now is tip this up on its side so we can have a look at the wiring. And I'll go over a bit about the wiring of this layout for the loops and everything like that and explain that a little bit as well, just for those people who don't know. So let's get this on its side and get this light installed. So standing back from the board here, you can see the loops of wire going around. Now these are called bus wires. And if we take a closer look, you can see this is where the power comes in. And you can see I've got written up there so I know exactly what's what. So blue is the 12 volt supply, black is the outer loop, yellow is the inner loop. And if we look, you can see how the wires have got black tape. So I know that's the outer loop, yellow for the inner loop, and then blue for the 12 volt supply. So that supplies all the lights. Now originally when I built this layout, it was a DC layout, which if you don't know what that is, with DC you have one controller per loop or section of track, and one controller will control one loco or engine. Now with DCC, which all I had to do in this case was join all the wires together up there, so both the inner and outer loop, and connect them to the one controller. And with DCC, one controller can control, depending on the power supply with it, I think from 4 or 5 locos up to 10, 20 locos, depending on the power supply. And the way DCC works is you have the controller. Each of your locos or engines has a little chip in it, and the controller controls the chip, so the line is always live. So there's always power going to it, so you can have an engine sitting in the siding with its lights on, if it's got sound with the engine, sounds running. So it's much more realistic. And so say easier to install, as it's only 2 wires. But when you look at something like this, it's not always as simple as that. So what we have here is we have the feeds coming from the track. So all the sections of track have got a feed coming down and then soldered onto the bus, which is then connected to the controller. So that's a brief overview of electrics on model railway layouts. You can also see there the construction of the baseboard, how this is a 6x4, it's 9mm ply, and you can see I've used 2x1 as a frame as bracing, and these are about 18 inches apart. Now if you're building a layout and you're going to be using what they call tortoise point motors, which are quite deep, you probably want to use something like 3x1 or 4x1 to give you that extra depth to protect the motors. Anyway, back on with the wiring. So there's the wires there for the new light, which I've put in. There's the old wires there. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to join these wires together. So we've got red to red, blue to blue, solder them together, tidy them up, use a staple just to keep the wires intact and out of the way so they don't get pulled. So I'll get the soldering iron out and we'll get cracking on that. So here we are, let's get soldering. So what I've done is these are the wires from the new light coming through the baseboard here. These are obviously the old wires of the broken light. So I've just twisted them together. I'm replacing it with the same light. I got these lights, I think, off eBay. They're sort of the cheap Chinese lights. They do a decent enough job. They're LED, so they're about a 3 volt supplies needed for them. Now I run a 12 volt supply through my layouts, so on here is a 10 kilo ohm resistor to reduce it down so the 12 volts doesn't blow the LED, because if you connected the LED up to 12 volts it would just burn brightly for about a second and that would be it, game over. So I'm just going to put a bit of solder on these joints just to keep them together. So I've got soldering iron, and I've got solder which already has the flux in it. And there we go, just a bit of solder on the tip of the iron and just run it along the wire. That's it. Quick and easy. Now, to protect that, I've got some heat shrink. I'm going to slide that over. And then you can either use a heat gun or something to shrink that, or just use the soldering iron just to let it heat it and shrink it. There we go. The other piece. And the heat shrink obviously insulates it, but also gives it a little bit more security. There we go. So now I've got my staple gun here. What I'm going to do is just get these into a position on the board. Obviously be careful you don't staple through the wires. There we go. And that'll just hold them in place. You might be able to see down here where I've used cable ties to hold the wires in place. So what I've done is I've stapled a cable tie to the board and then put the cable tie around the wires. It's just a cheap, easy way of securing the wires underneath. And if you want, you can get different coloured cable ties to go along with the different coloured runs. So you know, when you see the cable ties, you know what supply that is. So let's put it back down now, hook up the 12-volt supply and see if the light works. There we go. You can see the light's in place there. You can see we've got a peg just holding it in place while the glue dries. I always find using these plastic pegs are better with this glue because the peg doesn't stick to the glue. So let's apply the power and make sure it works before the glue dries. There we go. And now we have 2 floodlights shining down on the car park. So that's this layout done. It's going to go out of here. It's going to go into storage for a little while. Then I've got to get my Christmas layout back out, get that ready because that's going off to a show in a week's time. So I need to do a bit of work on that. And then it'll be full bore into my own layout, getting that done, getting the Scenics and everything completed on that, the wiring completed. So that's going to be an ongoing project for the next couple of, well, probably 18 months. So if you've been here this long, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for me. Give me a like, leave a comment. Check out my channel members as well and patrons. Thanks for their support. Their names will be scrolling on the screen. I'll pop another couple of videos up on the screen as well for you to check out, along with the subscribe button. So as always, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.